I bought my 5-acre property on the edge of a quiet, suburban neighborhood, precisely because it promised peace, privacy, and enough space to finally build the workshop I dreamed of for years. For the most part, the land was untouched meadow, lined with tall pines on one side and a small creek on the other. I spent the first few weekends walking my boundary lines with the survey, documents in hand, admiring the view, imagining my future projects, and planning where everything would go. Then one afternoon, as I reached the northern edge of my property, something unexpected came into view: a large wooden pavilion, complete with benches, a stone grill, a storage shed, and even a sign that read, HOA members only. It looked like a small community park built right in the middle of what the survey clearly marked as my land. At first, I assumed I'd made a mistake. Maybe I misread the map. Maybe the stakes were wrong. Maybe this was some kind of shared use easement the seller forgot to mention. But after spending that evening triple-checking everything, property lines, surveyor notes, county maps, one thing became absolutely certain. The pavilion was fully on my property, not an inch on anyone else's. The next morning, I visited the community HOA office, documents in hand. Inside, 3 board members sat at a long desk, all wearing matching expressions of indifference. Their president, a stiff-faced woman named Brenda, barely looked up from her laptop as I introduced myself. I'm the new owner of the 5-acre lot behind the neighborhood. I explained. There's a pavilion built on my land. I need you to arrange its removal. Brenda's lips tightened. No, she said flatly. That pavilion has been there for years. It's part of our community. It's not, I replied, holding out the survey. It's on my property. I'm giving you notice to remove it. She pushed the papers back without looking at them. We're not removing anything. The previous owner allowed us to use that land, so it belongs to the HOA by established use. That's not how property law works, I said, keeping my voice calm. Brenda narrowed her eyes. You're new here. Don't start causing problems. That pavilion stays. The meeting ended with them dismissing me like some trespasser making unreasonable demands. But I wasn't going to back down, not when my land was being used without permission. I filed a formal notice with the HOA the next day. They ignored it. I sent a certified letter. They ignored that too. After a week passed with no response, only one thing was left to do. I started planning my next move. The HOA must have thought I was bluffing. Maybe they assumed I'd eventually give up and let them keep using my land as their personal picnic spot. But I'm not the type to be pushed around, especially not by a group of people who act like they own anything their eyes fall on. So I hired a licensed surveyor to conduct a fresh, official boundary survey. I wanted everything documented, stamped, and legally airtight. When the new survey was complete, the results were exactly what I already knew. The pavilion, every post, every plank, every nail, was sitting 26 feet inside my property line. Armed with the updated survey, professional maps, and a written report, I delivered another formal notice to the HOA. This time, I attached a deadline: 14 days to remove the structure or face legal action. When I arrived at their office again, Brenda and 2 board members were waiting, arms crossed like I'd interrupted something far more important than trespassing on someone else's land. I placed the documents on their table. This is your final notice, I said. 2 weeks. After that, I'll have to take action. Brenda skimmed the papers, then let out a snort. You actually paid for another survey? Do you have any idea how ridiculous you sound? One of the board members laughed. Another shook his head. The arrogance in that room was unbelievable. We've used that pavilion for over 10 years, Brenda said. That gives us established community rights. No, it doesn't, I replied. Use without permission is trespassing, and the previous owner never signed any agreement with you. That's your problem, she snapped. Not ours. Then she leaned back in her chair and smiled. The kind of smile people use when they think they've already won. Go ahead, she said. Sue us. You won't get anywhere. I could feel my patience thinning, but I didn't want to lose my temper. I took a breath, nodded slowly, and packed up my documents. I'm giving you 14 days, I repeated. I'm being more reasonable than you deserve. Do whatever you think you need to, Brenda replied, waving her hand dismissively. But the pavilion stays. We're done here. As I walked out of that office, I realized something important. They didn't believe I had the courage, the patience, or the resolve to follow through. They thought I was just another new homeowner they could bully. But that was about to change. Over the next few days, I prepared every legal and practical step I needed. I filed the notices, documented the structure, recorded all communication. And when the 14 days passed with zero response from the HOA, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. On the 15th day, sunrise broke across my land like a signal flare. The morning air was cool, the grass wet with dew, and there wasn't a soul in sight. I had given the HOA every legal chance to do the right thing. They ignored me at every step, mocked me, and acted like they owned what was mine. So now, it was time to take action, lawfully, decisively, and with full documentation. My friend Mark, a contractor, arrived at dawn with a bulldozer on a trailer. He had read every paper, every notice, every survey, and he knew exactly what I was dealing with. When he stepped out of the truck, he asked only one question. "You sure about this?" I nodded. They had 14 days. This is my property. He didn't ask anything else. Before starting, I took pictures of everything: the pavilion, the shed, the sign, the boundary markers, and the bulldozer itself. I made sure every angle was recorded. My lawyer had told me to document every second, and I wasn't taking any chances. When the bulldozer's engine roared to life, the sound echoed through the trees like a warning to anyone who dared trespass. Slowly, Mark guided the machine toward the pavilion. The first contact was almost gentle, a nudge that made the wooden beams tremble. But then came the push. The pavilion groaned, cracked, and then, with a deep crunch, collapsed inward like a house of cards. The benches snapped. The grill tumbled sideways. The shed splintered under the pressure. Everything fell exactly where it stood, on my land. I didn't touch anything outside the boundary line. Not 1 inch. Not 1 stone. But the noise must have traveled, because within minutes, a small crowd of HOA members appeared at the edge of the field, shouting and waving their arms. "What are you doing?" One of them yelled. "It's private property." I shouted back. "I warned you." Then Brenda arrived, red-faced and furious, stomping across the grass like she owned the place. She didn't even stop at the boundary. She marched straight toward me. "You can't do this," she screamed. "This is community property." "No," I said calmly. "It was trespassing. And now it's gone." She threatened to call the police. I told her to go ahead. I had all the documents ready in a folder. When the officers arrived, they examined everything: surveys, notices, pictures, timestamps. One officer walked the property line twice. Finally, he turned to the HOA crowd. "He's within his rights," the officer said. "This structure was built illegally on his property." The look on their faces was priceless: shock, disbelief, and complete humiliation. But the real battle was still ahead. The demolition was only the beginning. The HOA wasn't used to losing, and they definitely weren't used to being proven wrong in front of their own members. So instead of accepting fault, they doubled down. 2 days after the pavilion came down, I received a thick envelope stuffed with claims, threats, and an outrageous invoice, demanding that I pay $38,000 for damages to community property. That was their first mistake. I handed everything directly to my lawyer, who took one look and said, "They just handed us the case gift-wrapped." We filed a lawsuit immediately: trespassing, unlawful land use, harassment, attempted extortion, and property rights violations. My lawyer also requested compensation for the land they had occupied for a decade, plus legal fees and punitive damages. The case moved quickly because the evidence was overwhelming. The surveys were clear. The notices were documented. The demolition was fully recorded. And their false invoice was the nail in their coffin. In the courtroom, Brenda tried to put on her usual superiority act. But under oath, she cracked fast. She claimed the previous owner had verbally allowed them to use the land. My lawyer calmly held up a signed statement from the previous owner saying he had done no such thing. Then she claimed community rights. The judge shut that down in seconds. Then she said I had destroyed beloved neighborhood property. My lawyer responded by projecting the county map on a screen, clearly showing the pavilion planted deep inside my land. It was almost embarrassing how fast the judge lost patience. "This is not your land," the judge said firmly. "You have no rights to build or maintain any structure on it. Your refusal to remove the pavilion after multiple notices is a clear violation of property law." Brenda tried one last desperate move, blaming me for emotional distress caused to the neighborhood. The judge leaned forward and said, "Ma'am, you should be grateful he didn't sue you for more." And then came the ruling. The HOA was ordered to pay me $100,000, $65,000 in punitive damages, $20,000 in legal fees, $15,000 for unauthorized land use. Brenda's jaw practically hit the floor. The room behind her erupted into arguing as members turned on each other, accusing the board of mismanagement and stupidity. Some even apologized to me on their way out. As for the HOA, they were forced to increase everybody's fees to pay the judgment. I heard Brenda resign shortly after. With the pavilion gone and justice served, I finally built my workshop in its place. Every time I walk past the freshly poured concrete, I remember how a stubborn HOA tried to steal a piece of my land, and how I got paid six figures for proving them wrong.